So we're going to start with chapter 2 first. Chapter 1 is things that you've already done in social studies before. So we start in 7th grade with chapter 2. Chapter 2 is called Before the First Global Age, Prehistory to 1600s. And we start off with the first civilizations of the Americas. Now, when we talk about the Americas, we're talking about North and South America, not just the United States. And what people want to know is how did the first people reach North and South America? There's a couple different ideas that we're going to talk about today. Most people, though, most scientists believe that the first people crossed the land bridge during the last ice age. Now, if you see here, this is North America. This would be the United States. But up here, is Canada. And down here is Mexico and other Latin American countries in here in South America. So these are the Americas, okay? The land bridge would have been from Asia to North America. So if you see here, this red line, this is a land, this would have been land. This right now is water though, okay? Another theory is that the first people who came to North and South America over the course of thousands of years, they and their ancestors went along the coast by boat over the course of, like I said, thousands of years. So those are two possible theories, and like I said, the theory that most scientists believe is during the last ice age, this was all frozen, and in fact, there was land there because the glaciers took water from the ocean and actually dropped the water level of the ocean. So this actually would have become land, and they would have walked across that land that connected Asia to North America. So the two continents you need to know are Asia and North America that were connected. And when glaciers locked up water from the oceans, it caused the sea levels to drop. And when that happened, the land was exposed. So the water wasn't there between Asia and North America. So the ice age is no longer around, obviously. Temperatures rose, the glaciers melted, and that's why there's no land bridge today that connects Asia to North America. So this is a little video that I'm going to show you now on the land bridge theory.
For over a century, scientists.
Okay, hopefully you were able to see that video. If not, there will be a link in the slideshow that you can watch it. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, we talk about Native Americans, and Native Americans really they didn't know how they got here. They had different ideas in their culture on how they got here. Here are some ones that you may find interesting. One Native American group believed that they fell out of the sky and they landed on a giant turtle. Another believed that a raven, which is a bird, a raven released them from the clasp of a giant clam. Another group believes that they were molded from mud in the middle of a world of water. And then another group believes that they came across a great body of water. So those are just different theories of how they got here, and those are mythical stories that they would tell each other. So farming, what farming is, agriculture. It brought change to those who practiced it because when people started farming, they no longer had to move around to find food. They could stay in one place, they could build permanent villages, and when they were able to do that, they produced more food, obviously, and then their population grew. So they could start to then focus on, building their society versus just going looking for food. Native Americans are known for growing these crops: squash, corn, and beans. These were also called the Three Sisters. For civilizations, so the Native Americans built civilizations over the course of thousands of years, and there's 5 features of civilizations. One is cities. The next is they create well-organized governments. They create different social classes. They create a religion, a complex religion, and they have some sort of method of record keeping. The earliest known civilization in the Americas was called the Olmecs, and the Olmecs were in Central America in the Gulf of Mexico. So if you look here, this is a blow-up map of Mexico, and the Olmecs lived in this area here of the Gulf of Mexico. And one advance of the Olmecs was that they studied the stars, so astronomy, and they created a calendar which shows the passage of time. Another group that was in the Americas, another huge Native American group, were the Mayas. And the Mayas lived in present-day Guatemala and present-day Mexico. So again, here's this map. This is Mexico here. All of this is Mexico, Gulf of Mexico, Pacific Ocean. This is where the Olmec would have lived. Okay, the Olmec and the Maya didn't live at the same time, and this is where the Mayas lived. Okay, and the next group I'm going to talk to you about is the Aztecs. The Aztecs would have lived over here, and again, these are at different times of history. They're not all at the same time. Another map of the Mayas. This is present day Guatemala, Belize. These are all countries now. Mexico, Honduras. Okay, so 3 Maya advances that you need to know is that they were experts in astronomy. They predicted eclipses. An eclipse, remember, is with the sun, where the moon blocks out the sun. That's called a solar eclipse. They actually predicted those. They created a system, a number system with 0 in it, and they created a 365-day calendar. That says calendar under there. This is the Mayan calendar, and this is different Mayan math. This is one of their pyramids that they built. This is at a place called Chichen Itza. Okay, the Aztecs. The Aztecs were another civilization that grew up north of. That grew north of the Maya, like I said before, in Mexico. Okay, so a little blow-up map of the Aztec Empire. They had a capital on an island, so they connected their capital to the mainland. Like I said, the capital was on an island, and they constructed something called a causeway. Excuse me. Causeways are it's a road, raised road made of packed earth. Here's a picture of a causeway right here. So this is a road that connects the mainland with their island capital. Two ways that the Aztecs learned to farm in the swamp and the lake. One way is that they dug canals to drain the swamps. The mud that they removed filled in parts of the lake. And then in other places, they attached reed mats. So this is a think of like straw, like a drinking straw. That's what a reed looks like. They attached reed mats to the lake bottom with long stakes. And then they piled mud onto the mats to create farmland. So this is what it would end up looking like. This is another name is chinapas. You don't have to know that, but these are called floating gardens. So under here are reeds, and they put the dirt on top of the reeds, and then these gardens actually floated on the lake itself. So that's kind of neat. So the Aztecs, they wanted to please their god, so they sacrificed thousands of captives, people that they would capture, enemies of them. They would sacrifice them, and the reason why they did that is they believed that the sun required a sacrifice to cross the sky every day. So the Aztecs were known for their human sacrifices. Now another group is the Incas. The Incas lived in South America. They lived in the Andes Mountains of South America. And so here's South America, and this is the Andes Mountains right here. And so it's a mountain range that goes along the west coast of South America. Excuse me. And that's where the Incas lived. The Incan emperor ruled over 10 million people, which is an amazing amount of people ruling, to be in control over. And the way that he was able to control those people and to, be their leader was that they built a system of roads. And they built a system of roads that covered over 10,000 miles. And they had runners. They had people that ran not 10,000 miles, but they had teams of runners. And these teams of runners would run a certain distance, and then another team would take over. And so because of that, they were able to spread different orders that the king had over that huge empire. Again, here's the system of roads that the Incas had, right? And they would runners would go out in different directions, and they could pass out the message. The capital city was called Cuzco, right here. They built rope bridges. They're known for their rope bridges that cross, gorges. This is obviously a treacherous river. And they did that to cross for obvious reasons. They can't take a boat in there. They also created something called a quipu. Quipus were a way that they did their record keeping. So basically it's a string with knots on it. And these knots represent different numbers. So like, for example, right here is 1 knot. So that represents 1. 3 knots would be 3. This knot, the way this knot is made, there's 2 together. There's 2 like little strings. So that's 2. So 132. And that's their record keeping for the Incas. All right, 2 examples that show that the Incas were skilled engineers. They built these huge stone temples and forts. They moved stones that weighed up to 200 tons. They don't have any kind of machines. Like when I say machines, I mean like, with gasoline and engines and tractors like we think of today. They didn't have that. They did that all with manpower, really. They also farmed the dry, rugged mountain lands. They became experts at terrace farming. So terrace farming is when they cut steps out of the steep mountainside. So I'll show you that in a minute. But here's like an example of their rocks, their rock walls and their foundations for buildings. They were able to take rocks and chisel them with another rock. Now, they didn't have metal. They didn't have steel or any kind of chisels with like we have today made out of metal. This is all before metal was introduced to them. So they were able to take strong, harder rocks and chisel these rocks and make them all fit together, which is a pretty enormous challenge. Here's the picture of a terrace farm. So what they would do is they would cut along the edge of mountains, right? They would cut these steps, and then on the steps they could do their farming. So that way you can farm on the side of a mountain. So the different cultures around North America is because of the flow or transfer of products and ideas. All of these are different types of Native Americans. This is mainly the United States. And you can see that there's so many different types of Native Americans, especially look over here on the West Coast. There's a whole bunch of different types of different people, and these are different cultures, and they had different ideas about how to live and even religion and so on. One of the ways they adapted, for example, in the desert, there was a group called the Hohokam. They adapted in the desert 2,000 years ago, living in the desert. There's no water. But what they did was they dug irrigation ditches so they could farm the desert. So, for example, here's where the Hohokam live. This is Arizona, the state of Arizona, and there's a couple rivers there, not a lot. There's a couple, and the Gila River and the Salt River are in Arizona, and the Native Americans there dug ditches that would go for miles, and they could actually grow crops. So you see here, here's the Gila River, and they would dig irrigation ditches coming out from the river. They would actually bring water on into the desert land, and they could grow their crops. Here's another picture. This would be an irrigation ditch, okay? And this is the water flowing through it. And then from here, you can get your water and you can water your plants. Another group in the desert in the southwest are called the Anasazi. The Anasazi, they built their houses out of stone, but the stone that they actually made brick, really, called adobe. Adobe is sun-dried brick, and they built this basically taking the dirt and mixing it with water and then laying it out into the sun to dry, and that becomes a brick. Sometimes they would build their homes along steep cliffs to protect from getting attacked from enemies. So this here is in the side of a cliff, and this is their adobe. This is all, you can't really tell right here, but these are all little bricks, and this is their houses. In the another Native American group in the southeast are called the Mound Builders, and this is over 3,000 years ago. They built these huge earthen mounds. They built them, I'll show you a picture in a second. They built these mounds for burials and for religious ceremonies. And the Mound Builders, most of them were here in the southeast. They did extend up into the north a little bit, but most of them are in the southeast. Here's a picture. This is taken from the sky looking down. This is called Serpent Mound. You can see it looks like a snake, like a serpent. Okay, and this is a huge. You really can't tell, but this is huge. This right here on the very end, these are stairs that lead up and over the mound. So this is a very big mound, and they call it Serpent Mound. Okay, so that's it for the notes for today. There's also a slideshow of vocabulary words that you need to look at and study, and you'll be responsible for those vocab words on a vocab quiz.